everyone, my name is Jess. I am an indie author. I wrote these two books. Links will be down below. Getting all of my stuff out of the way first. Hello. We are officially in July now, and this is a book channel now. I may talk about writing at some point, but right now I really want to talk about our books. So, we're going to talk about the best books that I've read so far this year. I have narrowed it down to 5. And we'll just see if these books make it at the end of the year. Since we're halfway through, we're just gonna talk about fun books that I've enjoyed a lot this year. So these are the books right here. They're in no particular order of like favorites or even when I read them. They're just kind of in whatever order they worked well in the stack. So the first book we're gonna talk about today is Mysteries of Thorn Manor by Margaret Rogerson. Now, this is a novella. It came out in January. However, it is spoilers if you haven't read Sorcery of Thorns. So I would recommend reading this first. I'm not actually going to talk about this little one, even though this one was the one I read this year and is a wonderful book. You have to read this one first. This one, the novella picks up exactly where this one left off. So you need to read this one first. So I'll just tell you about this book instead because it is one of my favorites. This is my attempt at tabbing. It kind of worked anyway. So Sorcery of Thorns is by Margaret Rogerson, and it is about a kind of secret library. Not really secret, I guess, but their job is to make sure that books don't come alive and kill people. Books are sentient. The main character ends up having to leave the library because she is framed for the murder of one of her teachers. She didn't, but that's just kind of how that cookie crumbles. She was the only witness and things get really weird. I love this book so much. I read it in December of last year, obviously. It's the only December there is. And I just love this book so much. It is so smart and so funny. There's a section in the middle that read trigger warnings for because it gets a little intense at certain points, but I loved this book so much. The characters are my friends and it was so good to read the little mini one earlier this year. So that's Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. You have to read this one before reading Mystery of Thorn Manor. Both really wonderful books. So that's the first one. The next one is also in a series, but The Bronze Beasts by Roshani. I don't know how to say her last name. I'll link it down below. This is the last book in the Gilded Wolves trilogy. I think this one came out in like 2021, I believe, something like that. So it came out a few years ago. The series is complete. 2021. I just thought, first of all, the descriptions in this book, in this series, are just amazing. This book made me realize that I feel like peak writing is interesting uses of similes and metaphors. And this book has them. You have to read them in order. So Gilded Wolves is first. I'll link it down below. I don't have it with me. I have to buy it still. Anyway. This book, the series takes place in like the 1980s in different areas of the world. The first one takes place in France, the second one is in like Russia, and then I believe this one is in Italy. Basically, they're kind of, the main characters are kind of like, they're young, they are treasure hunters, they are involved with like different, it's hard to explain, but basically there are several houses that kind of rule over different parts of the world and are in charge of kind of magic and how that works, and they're kind of involved in kind of disrupting that. It's like heisty, the magic is super interesting, it basically makes inanimate objects alive and is very alchemy based and less about just like, ooh, stuff happens. This one kind of explains it, and so it's super, the ending I felt like was just perfect. these characters are really wonderful and have really kind of intense character arcs. And the romance is really wonderful in this. This one is great. So Gilded Wolves is first, but I read the last one, The Bronze Beasts. Wonderful. All right, next up, this one I'm going to skip to the bottom of the pile. This one I've already talked about on this channel, so I promise this is the last time I talk about it until the end of the year, which I think it will make it to the end of the year of my favorites. But Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Rivals to lovers. There's a war going on. Gods are having people fight their war for them. The two main characters are journalists, and they end up writing magical secret notes to each other, not realizing who each other are. Oh, this book is wonderful. I highly recommend reading it. This is the last time I will talk about it until the end of the year, I promise. But this book is just, the writing is so good. The characters, we love sassy characters. They're sassy. Their banter is so good. But, you know, this book really reminded me why I like reading in the first place, of just getting completely sucked into a story. Dreaming about it, thinking about it constantly. I just couldn't live my life until I was done reading this book. Highly recommend. We'll link it down below. Okay, last time we talked about that one. Next up, we have The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, I believe is how you say their last name. This book has been on my radar for a long time. It was really popular a few years ago, and I don't know why it took me so long to read. I think I was afraid that it was going to end poorly, or that it was going to be sad somehow. It wasn't. This is cozy, fantasy, kind of adjacent to like realism. I don't know how to describe it exactly. Basically, our main character, Mr. Baker, is a kind of social worker for magical children. And so his job is to go around to different orphanages and to just make sure that no kids are, you know, that they're being run the way they're supposed to be run. So he's a government job, but so he doesn't have any magic, but he is around magical beings all the time. So he gets sent on a very secret mission to look at a school that is a high-level magical school, and he's a very, like, he's lived his life and is just kind of going through the motions. He doesn't really seem to have anything he's super passionate about or really cares about. It's a government job. It's still the same even when you're working for magical beings, which is pretty hilarious to read about. But he goes to this island and his entire world changes. The characters are so wonderful. I love them all. This book ended in such a hopeful way. I think that sometimes I feel a little bit like there's no point to trying to fight for the right thing, because it just feels like angry voices are louder and it's not going to matter what we do. But this book made me feel like perhaps it does matter what we do, and it does matter, you know, fighting for the right thing and putting yourself out there. It just had so much hope, and I think that's what stories are meant to do. Also, I got the Barnes & Noble version, and it's gorgeous. Like, it goes from the cover and continues to the pages. So pretty. So, highly recommend. House of the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Really loved this one. Yes. We'll link it down below. Okay, and this one I actually haven't talked about on this channel at all. This is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. This book is also cozy. I would say cozy adjacent. There are certain points in this book that get a little bit, like, thrilling, I guess you could say. A little stressful. And this is by Heather Fawcett. So, Emily Wilde is she's a researcher. What she's trying to do right now is create an encyclopedia of every fairy and what they do and kind of why they are the way that they are. Fairies are very involved in the worlds kind of around her, but they show up in small little towns. Like, they're not really in cities or anything like that. They kind of live wildly, almost like wildlife. So it feels like she's like a wildlife like researcher, but it's only for fairies, which is super interesting. So she's socially awkward, and she goes to this small town in the mountains, and she offends everybody because she's just not very good at talking to people or understanding nuances of small town life. So she's just very focused on her point and doesn't understand why the townspeople are not really interested in her. It also has a very sweet old dog in it, which is really fun to read about. And her coworker ends up coming, kind of almost her rival in like the academic world, and he comes and smooths things over with the townspeople and stuff. And it's just kind of her trying to make this encyclopedia. But things start happening because the fairies and the fae that are in this town are mischievous and kind of cause a lot of havoc. And so she kind of has to figure out what's going on. There's a mystery element of it. Yeah, but I just really loved this book. I think I read it in a couple days. The next book is coming out next year. It doesn't really end on a cliffhanger or anything. The story's like well-rounded, but I am excited to read more about these wonderful characters and kind of see, because she's so bookish and so academic and sees things through such like a clinical eye that it's really funny to watch her kind of interact with the world around her. Anyway, highly recommend. That is the Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. So those are all the books. I narrowed it down to 5. We'll kind of see if the books make it to the end of the year, because we still have about, half the year to go. I think some of it probably will, but I don't know. It's fun to kind of look back and see what's going to end up being my favorites of the year. So that'll be fun to see in the future. But anyway, those are the books that I've really enjoyed. They're my favorites so far. Are there any books or media or anything that you've just really enjoyed or want to share? I'd love to read it in the comments below. But thanks so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, links to all my socials, all my books, all my everything is going to be down below. But yeah, thank you. I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye.